Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I am here with my wrap up for September. September was one of my best months, one of my most productive months, and that is all because of Maggie's readathon. I had so much fun. If you guys joined the readathon, you know it was so fun. It was so competitive. The Phantom was after us. It was fantastic. I had so much fun chatting with all the people in my team. I love the ballet dancers. So thank you if you were a ballet dancer. Even if you weren't, if you were on another team, we definitely got into it in the chat. But anyways, it was fantastic and it made me read so much more than I usually do. So September was fantastic. So before I go on and on, let's go ahead and get into my wrap up. Okay guys, so first with this wrap up, I'm going to be going over my stats. If you're new to my channel, I actually do weekly wrap ups. I go over every book that I read weekly. So in my wrap up, I'm not going over all the books I read. I'm actually just going to go over my top 5 books, which was really hard to narrow down this time because I had a lot of 5 stars and a couple 6-star reads from this month. So a lot of them don't even get to get mentioned here. So if you're interested, make sure you check out my weekly wrap-ups. I'll try to put that up on the cards. I have a playlist. You can go check them out there. So first, let's go ahead and dive into my stats. So September was amazing. I read so much more than I thought I would. I read 40 books and I had 1 DNF. So pretty fantastic. I had such a good time with this readathon. I was really banging these out. Now currently I'm almost like basically in a reading slump or just feeling burnt out because I pushed myself so hard. So I need to get back into it because I have a lot of arcs to read in October. But anyways, let's go over some of these stats. The stars that I rated, I had 2 6 stars, 14 5 stars. So that gives you an idea. I have a lot of books to try and narrow down to my top 5. I had 13 4 stars, 7 3.5 stars, 2 3 stars, 2 2.5 stars, and then I had the 1 DNF. Some of the formats I read 13 ARCs and ALCs, 1 paperback, 12 ebooks, 1 fanfic, and 24 audiobooks. So I also read different genres, different tropes here. I read, and these are a lot from my team's tropes, you'll see. I read 10 Why Choose, 4 Shifter, 4 Paranormal, 8 Contemporary, 3 Fantasy, 2 Historical, 2 Sports Romance, 2 Post-Apocalyptic, 4 Dark Romance, and 1 Mafia. Usually I'm primarily reading Mafia and Dark Romance, so you can tell what my team's tropes were, which was Why Choose, Shifter, all of that. So definitely a great month for those types of reads. So I had a fantastic month. So big thank you to Maggie for putting on such an elaborate and creative and just amazing readathon. I don't think anybody can touch that type of readathon. It's one of the best that I've ever been a part of. And it's just so fun and interactive. So if you didn't join this year, make sure you join the next one because it's so fun. I know it seems like a lot and a lot goes into it, but once you're in it, it's so fun. And even though the Discord, you can get pretty heavy in there, there's so much chat rooms and chats going on. It was so fun to interact with everybody. To the point, I was almost thinking of doing a Discord for my channel, but I don't even know how to create a Discord. So it's something I'm thinking about. Okay, so let's go into my top 5 books. Unfortunately, my first one, I don't have a copy of this book yet. I need to buy it. I'm debating. I like the mail cover is available now on paperback, just got available. And then also her discreet cover is actually really beautiful. And I love that one too. So I don't know which one I want to buy. But anyways, I should probably tell you what it is. This was my 6-star that blew me away, and that is Born for Silk by Nicci Harris. This book just blew me away. I had to give it 6 stars just because of the world building. I was fascinated with the world building, the post-apocalyptic fantasy vibes of this. It's a dark romance set in like weird times. And I just loved it so much because it's so different from what Nikki Harris usually writes. She does mafia romance, and she totally went out of her usual kind of genre and went into this post-apocalyptic fantasy world. And I think that takes such guts and bravery, and just, it's a huge risk. But it fucking paid off because this book was fantastic, and I can't wait till the other books come out in the series. I'm lucky to be on her street team, arc team, and so I was so lucky to be able to get an arc for this. So anyways, what this book is, if you haven't seen me talk about it yet, it is set post-apocalyptic. We have kind of a whole different system here, and it's really hard to explain. So I pulled up my review because there's so much that goes into the world building of this that can be kind of complicated. So in this we have Aster, and she is a silk girl, and these silk girls were basically made, like they are girls that could actually breed with this other type of human that was created. So that's kind of a bad way of explaining it. Basically what ended up happening was humans started genetically enhancing different things and humans, and so now we have these genetically enhanced kind of humans that are in power. And that's Rome. He is the king of the trade, or the cradle. So let me explain that. The cradle and the trade were created 1,000 years ago, after 1,000 years of climate change. So they engineered humans, which led to like a civil war. And so now the Zinde, which are the genetically enhanced, they are in power. And everybody in the world is given a trade, and that's what they're supposed to aspire to. Their goal in life is this trade. So like the silk girl, that's their trade. That's their, their whole reason for being is to be this breeder for the king or his lords. So that's their whole purpose. So the Zinde are much larger. They're like 7 feet. So this is a big size difference. And basically the Aster is one of the silk girls, and they've been like very sheltered, and they've been raised to be the perfect silk girl for the royal kind of people. So she ends up getting picked with other girls, and they all get to become silk girls, but they don't know who the king is going to breed with. Basically they wear like a covering over their eyes and just lay in bed, and then like his other lords, the higher ups in his, royal world, they come in, and then he goes in and they breed with the girls, and none of them know who the actual king's silk girl is, that way to protect his heir, so nobody goes after them. So in this we have Aster, and she is kind of different from the other girls, and he immediately is like into her, and they have a connection, and so he wants to be with her, but he doesn't want to just breed her, like he wants her to himself, and he gets very possessive. There are outside elements, that come into play, dangers. There's like these cannibal types. So there's a lot of dark stuff that goes into this world. What goes on between them isn't dark or anything. It's more of like the world stuff that's going on. So, I just really loved this. I loved the breeding. I loved the dynamic. He's too big. The world building was just so much and interesting, and she had these great maps, and I just want to get the book so bad. So I ended up giving that one 6 stars. It blew me away. The other 6-star that I have was Manacled, because I finally read it. I finally read this fanfic that everybody loves, and I can tell you it is worth the hype. It is worth the hype. I really loved this. It's obviously, if you don't know, this is a Hermione fanfic, and it is a dark romance, because in this world, it is basically if Voldemort had won. Harry, most of the people that you love and are important to you, most of the Order, they're all dead. So you're already going in there. It's dark. Hermione's been held as a prisoner, basically sensory deprivation, kind of held where she couldn't even talk, and it's pitch dark. She has blocked off a lot of her memories, so they can't even get to her memories. Once they discover she's been kind of tortured like that, they're pretty pissed because Voldemort would want her intact. and she basically gets put into this kind of this new thing that they're doing because they need to have more wizards. You know, they need to have, and they're not breeding properly. They're not like full blood wizards are not having babies or ones that have magic abilities. So they basically kind of have a Handmaid's Tale situation here where they have people that would be able to do this put into the home, and they're forced to basically be raped and to be breeding for these guys. Funny that both of my top 6 stars kind of have Handmaid's Tale vibes. This one's a little darker because Aster believes in what she's doing in Born for Silk and wants to do it. In this, Hermione does not want to be assaulted by Draco. She has lost some of her memories, not all of them. So she knows who Draco is. She doesn't want to be like this. And he's married, and now she's basically being assaulted. And so it's pretty dark. It does go into some flashbacks where you find out what happened during the war and, you know, what Draco's part in that was. And so there's a lot more to it. I think this is such a beautiful romance. And I know it sounds crazy to say that when you hear that, but there's more to Draco than meets the eye. And I just found it so devastating. It felt like real. It felt dark and gritty, and just, I really, really loved it. So I gave that 6 stars. I don't want to say too much about it because you don't want to give certain things away, but I would definitely check it out if you haven't already. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is Nightshade by Keri Lake. This is actually recommended to me from Becky from Bex Reads. Thank you so much, Becky, because this book blew me away to the point that I'm basically buying the next audiobook because I didn't realize this was a duology. But in this book, it does end for like a happy for now, but I think there's so much more to the story, so I can't wait to get to the next one. But this was so good. It has those major gothic vibes, like dealing with like reincarnation and like true love that withstands time, and just, it was so crazy. I almost gave it 6 stars, but I kind of want to wait till I read the second book because there's so much world building in this that it got really complicated for me, because I bought the audio book, but I ended up having to like highlight as I went on my ebook because there was so much going on. So it's a little bit complicated. As you can tell, I do love an author that can do great world building. But in this, we have Jericho and Farron. And Farron, her father was like really obsessed with this world called the Nightshade, and he kind of lost his mind and tried to unalive himself. But when he unalived himself, he jumped from a building and they never found his body, which is pretty weird. And she ends up getting approached by like a detective looking into like these murders that are happening that has this symbol that has to do with the Nightshade, where her father was learning like this type of language and doing all this research into it. This symbol is actually a birthmark on her, which is also another pretty weird thing. And so she ends up going, finding out like that her dad had wanted her to reach out to this person in the Nightshade or whatever. And she ends up finding a way through this demon guy to actually go to the Nightshade. And so she goes to the Nightshade, and the Nightshade is basically kind of like a purgatory. And it's where people go if they don't believe in heaven or hell. And so there's people, all the people there are like living daily lives. There's obviously dangerous elements, monstrous things there too. But they don't know that they're dead, that they kind of forgot their other life. So she ends up getting there, running into a woman that takes her back to like kind of like this castle, and that's where Jericho is. And he is the person that she was supposed to kind of try and find, because supposedly he knows what happened to her dad, or maybe he could help her find her dad. And so, because she thinks her dad actually went to this world on purpose and didn't really kill himself. So now you have this Nightshade world, and she is trying to figure out what's going on. Her and Jericho have like a really intense connection, but there's so much more behind that connection. And at the same time in this book, you are reading about like a long time ago, about a romance that went on between another couple and how it ended really badly. And so this book. I can't really say a lot about it because it gives things away, but it basically kind of deals with angels, demons, like half angel, half demon type of beings. There's just a lot going on, but it hooked me. I couldn't stop listening to it. The audiobook was fantastic. And I really loved the look into like the past too. Like that was so well done. So this one actually flowed perfectly when dealing with like flashbacks or like the past and the current timeline. So couldn't recommend that more. Then one of my anticipated releases came out, and that is The Finest Print by Erin Langston. I fell in love with Forever Your Rogue. It was a 6-star read, one of my favorite reads of the year. And I was so excited to get to this one. And this one we have Ethan and Belle. Belle is actually the daughter or like niece. If you remember, if you read Forever Your Rogue, she's Cora's niece. But she does have another book about Belle's father. He was kind of like a judge and everything. So it's their romance. And in this we have Belle, and she is a writer. She's trying to write a novel, but no publishing place is gonna publish it. She can't get anybody to accept her as like a female author, and the stuff she's writing is pretty dark because she's writing about like crime and like those kind of adventures of solving crime. And then we have Ethan. He is an American. He grew up in the printing world, and he actually found out that his he had like an uncle he didn't know about that left him this printing shop in the UK. So he travels, drops everything, takes a big risk, and goes out there to have this print shop. But he finds out that it is in debt, and he has like a limited time to get that amount of money to pay off, or that debt collector is going to take the shop. And so he's in a really bad place, and he happens to run into Belle a couple times. He finds out she's an author, and she's written the story that's not getting published. And he decides, we'll serialize your book into little kind of like Penny Dreadful, which they were called Penny Bloods at the time, or Bloody, I think so. Anyways, they're Penny Dreadfuls because you can do those really cheap and people buy them easier compared to if he did the news. There was like a news tax, and he would have had to pay more on tax, and a lot of people couldn't even, the regular people couldn't even afford to buy the news because it was heavily taxed. So, and that was all very fascinating to me. So they decide to do this. They end up working in this shop together every day, and it's a lot of those slight touches and longing glances. Like they're very into each other, and Erin Langston just does that so fantastic. She builds like the tension and the longing, and it's just romantic. But there is the issue of him being an American. He's not of class or anything, and he might not be able to stay there if the shop thing doesn't work out. What are they gonna do? So yeah, it was fantastic. I loved it. I gave this 5 stars. It wasn't a 6-star for me, as good as Forever Your Rogue, but I think it is so good. It was very sweet. Then I have one because it just blew me away with how angsty it was, and that is Clayton by Rachelle Mills. And this was one of the angstiest, heartbreaking, depressing books I've ever read. This is a shifter romance, and this deals with Clayton and Raya. And Raya discovered her mate was Clayton. This is like, you know, a shifter mate kind of thing. And she discovered he was her mate like when she was like 16, and kind of went up to him, and he basically rejected her. He had this longtime girlfriend. They were together since they were like little kids, and she's his like love of his life. And so he didn't want anything to do with his mate. And so he totally rejected her. In that moment, her wolf kind of lost it, and she went to attack the woman. And so she ended up getting disciplined, got lashed for that, and kind of like had to eat last, and was treated like an outsider in the pack. And it's just so freaking heartbreaking. And then she had to spend, like, because that was like in high school where they all go to school together, she had to spend a couple years seeing them together every day, him refusing to look at her. So him rejecting their mating bond was like really brutal for her. And so she ended up moving away to live with another, to basically kind of learn to be a okay, sorry, I totally lost it, my brain not working. She was trained to be a midwife, so that she could, you know, help deliver their babies, their pups. And so she was, apprenticing with somebody for a couple years, but now her pack and like the alpha is calling her back because they need one at their pack. And so she has to go back and see, her mate still with that girlfriend. And so it's so freaking heartbreaking, so brutal to see her have to like suffer watching them be together. And this guy and this girl are such fucking assholes. I hated Clayton. I hated his girlfriend. But she does meet Dallas, and he is the doctor, and they end up really building a connection. But there's the problem of her mate also being there. He's her mate, and he wants the mate, like the wolf wants to be with his mate, but he doesn't want to be with his mate. So it's this very complicated thing. And so I don't know. I can't go into it, but it was so fucking angsty. It does continue on to another book. And so I am going to be reading that in October. In October. I just had to put it off because my heart was breaking this entire book. I read this in a day. It put me through all the feels. So I had to put it on my top 5 because it really broke me, but I still loved it, if that makes sense. So I ended up giving that one 5 stars. It was fantastic. Not really a lot of spice though. So hopefully the next book gets a little bit more spicy. So those are my top 5 books. Again, I have so many others that I would want to bring up here, but I had to try and narrow it down. So there you go. Then I had my DNF was Company of Fiends. I honestly didn't really love the first one. I think I gave that 3.5 stars. It's like a very gothic wide shoes monster book. And so that's why I was going to read this one, because for the gothic wide shoes for my tropes, for my team. And I just couldn't do it. I was dying. I couldn't get through this book. It was even worse than the first book. And which my complaint about the first book was it was like just sex in every chapter without any character growth. I didn't care about any of the romances. There was no real romance. It was just effing nonstop. And in this, it's the theater that the chick works at, which its whole point is to have monsters fucking the women, the humans. And so that's literally what we're doing every chapter. And she doesn't have any feelings for any of these monsters. So it was just like stupid, repetitive, boring sex that I was just bored out of my mind. So I DNF'd it. The 2.5 stars I had was Black Sunshine. I just thought this was horrible. I thought it didn't have any world building. I thought like the vampire having her fuck his friend to get out her lust wasn't great when he's supposed to be the love interest. I thought it had so many missed opportunities and I didn't care. And then Hungry for Her Wolves was like another white shoes thing that I was trying, and I couldn't even tell you anything about the guys in this book because they were all like the same. This chick literally went from like, it's like her mates and she gets taken to their world, and it's also a shifter one, and she literally goes from not having sex to doing anal, and she's into it, and it just bugged the shit out of me. Anyways, didn't like it, not continuing with that series. So those were my top 5 books. Again, I had a lot of 5 stars, so a lot more books that I would love to bring up, but those were the top that I wanted to bring up for this month. So I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you're checking out my weekly wrap up. So if you want more details on every book that I read, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, and leave me a comment. And I will see you guys on the next one.